Good evening and welcome. My name is Steve Porcaro. I'm the president of the Windsor Chamber of Commerce. Today I'd like to welcome you to the Meet the Candidates Night, sponsored by the Windsor-North Central League of Women Voters, the Windsor Chamber of Commerce, and Windsor CT Votes. This event is nonpartisan and does not seek to endorse any candidate or party. The purpose of this meeting is to introduce the candidates to the public and inform voters for the upcoming election. The election is Tuesday, November 8th. The last day to register to vote is November 7th in person. If you have any questions about where or how to vote, you can go to the town website or call the town clerk or the registrar of voters. You can view tonight's program on the Windsor Government Access Channel, WinTV, or streaming on the Town of Windsor website. For those of you who are live, you don't have to disregard all of that. The candidates joining us tonight are running for State Senate, State House of Representatives, and Probate Judge. Our moderator tonight is Agnes Peer, League of Women Voter member. She will review the ground rules and introduce the candidates, and our timekeepers are from both the League and Windsor CT Votes. All right, ladies, take it away. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Agnes Peer, and I will be your moderator for today. What we're going to do is I'm going to go over some ground rules. I'm going to have a few introductory remarks, then I'll go over to the ground rules, and then I will begin introducing the candidates. Our program will be done in two parts. The first part will be our legislative part. The second part will be our probate judges. We'll take a 5-minute break between the two. Now, for a few opening remarks. On the wall over here is the new voting districts. The new voting districts were put into place at the beginning of this year. And so some districts have changed because we've gone from 4 districts down to 2 in our House of Representatives. To be able to get a full thing, as Steve said, you should go to the website. Now, to give some ground rules. First of all, each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for opening remarks to outline their priorities. The moderator will indicate each candidate. The length of the remarks will be timed. Each candidate will be asked questions chosen by the moderator. The candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. Other candidates will be able to, with differing views, will have a chance to make 1-minute remarks about the question from the same office. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes for a closing statement. Now, our ground rules. There are not going to be any substitutes or stand-ins for our candidates. A table will be provided for campaign literature over there if you'd like. The audience will be asked to refrain from applauding or in other ways demonstrating support or non-support for a candidate this evening. Candidates will be addressed as candidate. Candidates will remain seated at all times during the debate. Time limits on responses will be strictly observed. A timekeeper will hold cards visible to the speaker indicating how much time remains. When the stop card is shown, the speaker must end his remarks within 10 seconds. The moderator will have the responsibility for enforcing time limits. The moderator will also have the authority to interrupt the proceedings to enforce the ground rules and format that were agreed upon by the candidates. The moderator may restate the question, and that does not be part of your questioning answer, your time for your answer response. The candidate will not interrupt one another or in any way interfere with another remarks. Now, does anybody have any questions about those ground rules? If not, we're going to go forward now with our introductions. The first person that is running is in the second senatorial. His name is Mr. Douglas McCory. He is not being opposed by anyone, and unfortunately, he is not able to be with us today. So we're going to go to the seventh senatorial. Our first candidate for seventh senatorial is Mr. John Kissel, and you may have 2 minutes to recognize your priorities.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, Chamber of Commerce, and the folks working the closed caption television, and everybody here in our audience in real life for attending this discussion about the issues. I am a son of Windsor, proud to say that I grew up in this great town, the first English settlement in the state of Connecticut. Went to Sidney Hayden, which no longer exists, John Fitch School, which is now senior housing, Sage Park Middle School, and a graduate of Windsor High School. I did go on to get a Bachelor of Science in Education and Social Studies in English in secondary, went on to law school, and then got another bachelor's degree in history. I have been so honored to represent the folks in Windsor as well as 6 other towns, and now they've, with redistricting, added Ellington as well, for the last 30 years. And some folks may say, wow, why are you still doing this? And I'm as excited about serving you folks today as I was on the very first day. I think just the cost of living in Connecticut is a daunting hill that we have to surmount. I think that, unfortunately, the majority party tends to look at tax and spend policies. We have got to live within our means. We need to do a better job regarding energy costs, especially the LIHEAP program, Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, where we have fought for additional funding for this cold winter that's coming our way. And I also feel that crime is a huge issue as well. And I do serve on the Judiciary Committee where I'm intimately exposed to those issues. So I'm asking for your vote, and I'm looking forward to fighting for the good people of Windsor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kissel. And Mr. Kissel, the second candidate in the seventh senatorial is Cynthia Mangini.
Thank you. I would like to thank the Windsor North Central League of Women Voters, the Windsor Chamber of Commerce, and the Windsor CT Votes, and all of you who have taken time to come and observe and interact with our session. I am Cynthia Mangini. I'm born and raised in Connecticut. I've lived in Enfield, Connecticut for over 50 years. I earned my Associates in the Arts degree from Assunta Community College. Then I went to earn my Bachelor of the Arts in Political Science from the University of Connecticut, and I earned a Master's in Law from Western New England University. I have represented Enfield as a town council member for over 20 years. I've also served as a board member for the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities as the first woman from Connecticut to serve on the board of directors from the National League of Cities. I served as finance chair of the Finance Administrative Intergovernmental Relations Committee, also known as FAIR, in addition to serving on public finance. Working and serving on these committees was a tremendous responsibility, and I am honored to have been able to serve in these capacities. As your state senator, I will defend our freedoms and make our state more appealing and prosperous. I support early voting and increased access to voting. Laws that protect LGBTQ, minorities, and other groups who are often discriminated against need to be strengthened. I will continue to support education through appropriate funding, supporting women's reproductive rights, stronger gun safety laws, continue to support tax reductions, protecting our environment through better legislation, improving our infrastructure, and bringing better paying jobs to Connecticut are all ways which this will be accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go on to the House of Representatives, District 5. Mr. Elijah El Hajbeh.
All praise due to Allah. My name is Elijah El Hajbeh. I'm a retired employee for the city of Hartford. I retired at the age of 37. I started my business, Reliable Mechanical Contractors. I live in Windsor for 33 years. I put 3 kids through Windsor school system from kindergarten to high school, always on the high honors. I have created many jobs, and I expect to do a better job at creating more jobs. My mission is to unite us together. I guarantee you that I am not a politician, and I will be going after $1 billion my first term. I'm not trying to seek second term. I work for every utility company in Connecticut, so I know where the savings are. I am responsible for bringing natural gas up to Windsor, where everybody was converting to natural gas. Now that people have converted to natural gas, they're saying there is not enough gas. So I'm going to make sure that the people who've been on gas are compensated. I also going after the utility companies who put these solar panels on these roofs, and now they're saying that there's not enough electricity. So somewhere, somehow, we're not being told the truth. I'm here to say that you are all witnesses that I am chief of the Tuscarora Nation, so I'm alive and well. My ancestors have been here since the 1400s. So our land was purchased for one peppercorn a year. This $3 bottle have bought 150 years of a lease. So I'm here to make sure that what has happened to my family will never happen to the people of Windsor. I'm here to make sure that you are represented. And if you do not elect me, hold all the people accountable.
Thank you very much, Mr. El-Hajbeh. Now, Mr. Charles Jackson.
Hello, my name is Charles. My name is Charles Windsor Jackson III. I'm a longtime resident of Hartford and Windsor, and when I say long-term in Hartford, I actually mean about 7 years. I was born there. And I'm the elected constable for the town of Windsor. There are two others, but my badge is real. It was given to me by the town. So, anyhow, I'm active on 5 different boards and commissions. I am the secretary for the Wilson Deerfield Advisory Council, a chairman for the Fair Rent Commission. I'm also the treasurer for the Hartford Area Cable Access Television Council. I'm also on the board for the Windsor Freemasons Building Association. And I'm always here to help. Ever since I've ever showed up in that seat where you're sitting, Agnes, I've been here to help, ask a couple questions, ask for help, but usually here to give help. My priorities are about home ownership, increasing home ownership, not just affordable housing for rentals or anything like that. You build wealth by owning homes. But those homes need to be taken care of. A lot of our assets are faulty. Asbestos, lead, you name it. So there needs to be more bolstered programs to support those things. Also, technical and career colleges or career educational facilities. I apologize. I'm not a politician like Elijah said. I get nervous in front of the camera. I'm normally the guy behind the camera. But I do support tech schools and also constituent engagement, which is very, very important. If you have a problem, please come to me as your state representative, well, future state representative, and I will be able to help whether you're in my party or not. It doesn't matter. You're a member of the district. And lastly but not least, lower the gas tax and no tolls. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Now, our last candidate for District 5 is Miriam Khan.
Thank you. My name is Miriam Khan, and I've lived in Windsor most of my life. I was a graduate of Windsor High School. I have my bachelor's degree from Eastern Connecticut State University in psychology and a master's degree from Central Connecticut State University in special education, and I currently work as a special education teacher in Hartford Public Schools. This past March, I was elected as the 5th District State Rep, so I served a short term this past session. I serve currently on the joint committees for aging, children's, and judiciary. Prior to being elected as a state rep, I served on our Windsor Board of Education here in town for about 4.5 years, most recently serving as the vice president. While on the board, I served on the curriculum committee and our policy committee, which really helped me to see, how a lot of these things are put into place here at the local level. In terms of my vision, something that I want to see our state continue to invest in terms of in our community, is invest in our schools. Our public schools are not currently always fully funded, especially special education, so I want to be able to advocate for those needs. And making sure that people have access to healthcare is very important to me. This past session, I co-sponsored and voted for legislation that invested in clean energy, increasing mental health services for our children, grants that assist schools in upgrading their HVAC systems to ensure clean air in our schools. I'm excited to be rerunning for my reelection, and I've met a lot of people that in my district over the past year, and hearing from them what their needs and their visions are for the district is how I operate. I like to be able to have those relationships. Thank you.
Thank you. And now our last district, the House District, Jane Garibay.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters and the Windsor Chamber of Commerce. Good evening. I am State Representative Jane Garibay. I have been privileged to serve 4 years in the House of Representatives, and I am seeking re-election to continue to serve the 60th District. To give you a little background, I was born in Windsor, lived some years in Vermont and Mexico, where I met my husband, and then we moved back to Windsor to raise our children. I am proud of my history in community activism and participation, serving our community. I believe it has prepared me for this moment in time. When my children were small, I actively participated in their school, sports, and church activities. As my children grew, so did I. I eventually became PTSA president at the high school and was then elected to the Board of Education, where my greatest personal achievement was working to increase the number of student participation in AP credit courses, which not only saved them money, it helped them get scholarships and more. I also served as the Chamber of Commerce Executive Director for 20 years and presently First Town Downtown, giving me a unique perspective of business needs. I also believe my nonprofit work gives me another perspective in how to build coalitions and brings motivated individuals together to create change. One was the Education Foundation, which provides grants to teachers, and the other one is Project Santa, which both are a 501c3 that I created. I am chair of the Chair of Aging and in the Commerce and Human Service Committees. My legislative priorities are protecting our seniors, mental health access and resources, especially for children, supporting our teachers and students and schools, healthcare costs and access, climate initiatives, LGBTQI, and reproductive freedom, and all issues that matter to my constituents. I believe all these experiences give me the tools to advocate for my district and do it well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Walker. Mr. Len Walker is the candidate for the House 60th District.
Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters and for everybody else who put together this program. I'm currently an elected town councilor in Windsor, serving my 4th term. I'm married to a beautiful woman, Lynn Walker, and we're grandparents. We attend church at the First Cathedral in Bloomfield. I graduated from the University of Hartford with a business administration degree, and I graduated magna cum laude. I also attended graduate school. I am endorsed by the Connecticut Independent Party, Connecticut State Fraternal Order of Police, and the Connecticut State Police Union. I will advocate for fewer regulations, freezing taxes, and curbing the out-of-control spending by our state government. We know nothing is free from the government because someone has to pay the bill. Our taxes pay the bills. I will make sure police officers receive the resources and training they need to keep us safe. We must do everything possible to make sure that there are consequences for violent criminals, such as the ones that murdered 2 Bristol police officers. I believe in individual liberties, especially protecting parental rights. As a father, I know parents should always be fully involved with their children's education. Our children deserve the best education possible. Let's return to reading, writing, and arithmetic, basic subjects at the foundation of learning. I'm asking for the opportunity to go to the state capitol and work with my colleagues to reduce our tax burdens. Skyrocketing inflation has increased the price of basic goods and services, and folks are struggling to make ends meet. I will work every day to represent you. I humbly ask for your vote on November 8th. Please vote for Len Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. That concludes our opening statements. We will now go to the question rounds. There will be 2 question rounds. And I started with the senatorial districts. We're going to start going this way to come back, and then we'll start in the middle and fan out so everybody gets it fairly. You will have 2 minutes to respond to the question, and then you will be able to have 1 response, 1 minute to respond to that. So, starting with our first question, Mr. Walker of the
Okay.
of the 60th District.
Yes.
The question is the following. What specific steps would you propose to support affordable access to medical care in Connecticut? I'll read it again for you. What specific steps would you propose to support affordable access to medical care in Connecticut?
We all know that healthcare has its shortcomings, in that medical expenses could literally wipe out any given family. There are some issues that physicians are dealing with today, particularly some hospitals where there's a move to use teledoc versus having patients go in person to visit. If the hospitals and the private physicians can get reimbursed for those services, they can really increase their revenue, less staff, less time hours, and it actually helps for people who really don't need to be in an emergency room. Other than that, the federal government does its part, and I think we need to do a lot more to assist those people who are what we call on a fixed income, Social Security. We can do a lot more for them by making a lot more procedures and processes fairly priced so that people aren't overburdened. Other than that, people have to go out and get additional supplemental insurance plans. So to make it more affordable, it's actually up to the state working in unison with the federal government to put those steps into place.
Thank you. A response.
I believe that healthcare is a real issue in our state and our nation. We did have a plan 2 years ago. Unfortunately, it passed one chamber and not the other. To me, healthcare is a right of every living human being. And I think we're so caught up in the system of going to the hospital when you have a cut because you have no other place to go. So I've always advocated for some of our standalone clinics like up at Kennedy Road. People would be able to go there for minor issues instead of clogging up our room. And we have to take care of situations before I knew of a girl that cut her finger, was refused at ER, went back with an infection, still not an emergency. She ended up in a coma, which cost then thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So why go through all that? We have to find a way. We're smart people. We just have to do it, and we have to work for the people and not for the large insurance companies, corporations, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Garabay. In your opinion, has Connecticut done enough to rein in the influence of dark money in political campaigns? If not, what would you suggest? So I'll read the question again for you. In your opinion, has Connecticut done enough to rein in the influence of dark money in political campaigns? If not, what would you suggest?
So in my personal opinion, we have not reined it in enough, but we have some with the Citizens Campaign where prospective legislators earn a certain amount of money and then the state gives you $25,000, $30,000. So everyone is on an equal footing to do away with those that have more so that anyone can serve the public. In my experience, I have not seen that. I know what I go through, and my campaign promise was seek, as does Susan. I mean, it's very strict rules. There are always bad actors that break those rules, and they should be prosecuted, no matter which party, whatever. So I don't see that big, dark money on my local level.
Do we have a response to that? Mr. Walker, would you like to respond to that?
Oh, absolutely. I wasn't going to, but you asked me, so I'm going to. Actually, I don't think Connecticut has a lot of issues with voting and dark money coming in. I really don't. I think that there are steps that are in place that have been working, that are tried and true. Where dark money has an opportunity to seep into the electoral process is at the gubernatorial level and at the congressional and presidential levels, where we have PACs. And a lot of those PACs, people have no clue who is supporting those. But at the state level, as far as I know, I don't see an issue with it.
All right. We will then go on to the 5th senatorial. Because there are 3 of you for the response, I would like to just have whoever wants to raise their hand. I just want to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity, okay? So we're going to begin with candidate Khan, and this is the question. Do you support the referendum question on the November 2022 ballot? Shall the Constitution of the state be amended to permit the General Assembly to provide for early voting? Please explain your response.
Okay, yes, I absolutely support that referendum question. I'm really happy to see it on the ballot, and I'll give you some reasons why. So for those of you that might not know, there will be a question on the ballot this election day to ask if the Constitution of Connecticut can be amended to allow for early voting. And essentially what this would allow is, especially when my kids were younger, now they're a little older, I would have to kind of time what time I could go and vote because I had work during the day, and even though the polls open at 6, schools often open at 7, so you can't really vote before and then after the kids are home. So lots of families, lots of adults have to figure out a time when they can vote. A lot of us have been in long lines on especially presidential elections where we're in line for 2 hours. And I have family in other states that would often tell me, oh, I already voted, why are you voting on election day, you know? And so the benefit of having early voting would allow a lot more people to have their voice heard, which is what we want if we want a representative democracy. If we want our elected officials to be who we want them to be, then we definitely want to make sure that all people have access to vote. And so I'm, of course, very much for it. I think Connecticut, I believe, is one of the only 4 states across the country that does not allow right now for early voting. So I absolutely advocate for it, and thank you for that question.
Response. Anybody like to, would either one of you like to respond to that?
I believe in any kind of voting reform. There should always be not only voting reform, but enforcement. I support early voting. I would love to see enforcement. I always want to know why it costs $1 million to run for office. I want to make sure that everybody can vote. I want to make sure everybody can afford to run a fair campaign. I'm financing my own campaign with my own money. I don't take any money from anyone. So I want to make sure that the farmers as well as a politician is able to run and vote for them, any causes.
Thank you.
Yes, I support it, because if we don't do it now, we have to wait another 10 years. Thank you.
So, our next question, Mr. Jackson. Would you support an amendment to Article 6 of the state constitution to allow any qualified elector to, regardless of reason, cast an absentee ballot instead of appearing at a polling place on the day of election? Article 6 of the state constitution deals with absentee ballots. Right now, it gives only 7 reasons that you can choose to have an absentee ballot. So we're asking, would you support an amendment to Article 6 of the state constitution to allow any qualified elector to, regardless of reason, cast an absentee ballot instead of appearing at a polling place on the day of election?
Yes, I support it, and also in November, when the referendum comes up, it won't be needed probably, but any chance people can get to the polls, I support it, man. Early, absentee, whatever.
Does anybody want to respond? Does anybody have?
I am very leery of that because I'm against voter fraud. I have known and I have witnessed voting fraud. If the person was elderly and sick, I support that 100%. But to keep trying to, from year after year after year, then someone should be able to go out to verify that that person is the person that's been voting. Because I have known people who passed away, their names were still on the ballot for some reason. So I want to make sure that there are enforcement behind that.
Thank you. All right. The next question, Mr. El-Hajj Bey. What steps can the state legislature take to address lack of fair and affordable housing in most of Connecticut communities? And what is your position on zoning? Two-part question. What steps can the state legislature take to address lack of fair and affordable housing in most Connecticut communities? And what is your position on zoning?
My position is this, that the state of Connecticut have given away a lot of money to a lot of developers who have not fulfilled their obligations to provide affordable housing to poor people. My position is I want to go after poverty. I want to make sure that everybody can have affordable homes as well as be able to pay rent, buy groceries, buy medical, buy everything. You should not have to put all of your savings in just to one thing. So I want to make sure that when we say affordable housing, it is affordable housing. I don't want to keep giving developers money, and they're not fulfilling their obligation to provide affordable housing to poor people. So I want to make sure that we hold everybody accountable, and if you don't, we're going after all the tax incentives that we have given you. We're not going to just let you borrow money, walk away, and use us as a revolving door. So I focused on making sure that, like in Hartford, you're not pushing the poor people out. Where are they going to go? Because they have children. You're building up downtown Hartford with state money, but you're only building one-bedroom homes. Where are the families going to go? So I want to make sure that you don't just push poor people into Windsor. We want to make sure that everybody in this district is represented fairly.
Response, yes. Miriam?
Thank you. First I just want to quickly address a lot of people that I grew up with. Most of the people that I went to school with have left the state, and often that is because they can't get affordable housing in our state, right? So I think the state does need to address this lack of affordable housing. But then when we talk about affordable housing, I'm glad you guys put the point of it being fair. I'll also add for it to be adequate. So a lot of things I've seen as a teacher especially are students that have maybe just 4 years of education but have been in 5 different schools because they've had to move because they did not have adequate housing. And so looking at how even you can't talk about proper education if you're not talking about proper housing. And so all these issues kind of work together, and I think it's very important for us to look for adequate, fair, and affordable housing for the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to the 7th senatorial. Ms. Mangini. What is the best way for members of the public to give input to the legislature? Is it better through public hearings, messages on their Facebook page, written testimony, phone calls, or legislative offices? And what would you give the most attention to? So I'll read that to you one more time. What is the best way for members of the public to give input to legislatures? public hearings, messages on their Facebook page, written testimony, phone calls to legislators in their offices? And which would you give the most attention to?
All of the above are extremely important communication tools, public hearings, written statements, Facebook, phone calls. Any communication from the public is extremely important. Any way a person from the public chooses or feels comfortable in that arena is acceptable. I would encourage any and all methods. There are many individuals who are apprehensive in using electronics, specifically computer. Maybe some people are not on Facebook. Some people choose not to appear at a public hearing. Some people, would prefer a phone call because they don't want something in writing. So I would deter any method to that person solely. Every person is different. It's not one size fits all. So whatever the person chooses, I think is more than appropriate, more than acceptable. I would want to listen to all of people's needs in any forum that they choose. Thank you.
Mr. Kissel, do we have a response?
Sure, I substantially agree with much of what my opponent, Ms. Mangini, said. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we did away with public hearings where individuals could come to the Capitol and testify before various committees on bills that were before us. And I think that we need to get back to that paradigm as soon as humanly possible. I understand concerns about the pandemic and its residual effects, but we've got to open up the Capitol. It's the people's building, and have people come in and testify. That doesn't mean that they can't email us, call us, write us letters, or ask to vote a certain way or another. But again, my number one priority is opening up the people's building, the Capitol, for people to come in person and testify.
Thank you very much. And now for the final question of our first round of questioning, Mr. Kissel. How should Connecticut fund and sustain the state transportation fund? How should Connecticut fund and sustain the state transportation fund?
Well, I did hear that, first of all, I don't believe in tolls, and I think that we could reduce our gasoline tax. We're a small state. I never understood why we couldn't be more nimble. We used to have a state rep from Windsor-Locks, Carl Schissel, who was on the Finance Committee, a Democrat, happy to work in bipartisan fashion, who said if we reduce the gasoline tax in Connecticut, we could get people from New York, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts buying their gasoline here rather than quite often people from Connecticut going across the border and buying it in our surrounding states. We, unfortunately, and I would put the blame at the majority party, the Democrats, raid the transportation fund. They raid the special transportation fund to smooth out and balance the general fund, and that is a practice that has to stop. If we didn't raid the special transportation fund as a legislature, it would be more than healthy. And I'm not concerned going forward regarding our transportation needs because Congress just passed this massive infrastructure bill with millions, billions of dollars for transportation initiatives, whether it's Bradley International Airport, which falls within the 7th Senatorial District, our highway systems, or our rails. And I'm looking forward to the building of a train station in Windsor-Locks, which we just did the groundbreaking. Another one's on the design table for Enfield. And Windsor, you can just see, just by walking out here, the beautiful train station that you folks have. So we're on the move, but again, the biggest problem that I see regarding transportation is raiding that special transportation fund. If we just didn't do that as a legislature, the majority party in particular, we'd be in great shape.
Thank you. Would you like to have a response to that?
Yes, I will respectfully disagree with a couple of the issues here. First of all, raiding the transportation fund really is not what has happened. And to my opponent's point, we just celebrated a couple of ribbon cuttings, one for Windsor-Locks and one for Enfield for the train station. And that, I know Enfield project has been going on for quite some time. Also, tolls. Let's not shut the door on tolls because we have vehicles from out of state that do come in and use our roads. we need to further explore that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. That takes care of the first round of questions. We're going to go on to the second round of questions. We're going to begin with the Connecticut House, 5th District. Mr. El-Haj Bey, the question is, what can we do to make Connecticut more energy efficient?
Tell the truth. Ask where the money is going. Connecticut have lots of programs for people to insulate their homes. That was because they had added a tax to your energy bill, your gas bill, your electric bill. They had built up this fund so much that they had to decide what they're going to do with the money. So they came up with Energize Connecticut. I am the only contractor that represent all the utility companies under that program. It gives people incentives in improving their energy. So you come out, pay $59, do an audit. Well, they'll come out and tell you where you're losing all your money. They'll insulate your home. They'll give you high efficiency boilers to make sure that you are saving. So the boilers that I still install is Nevians. And everybody who bought a boiler from me, their gas bill have went down from $400 a month to either $79 to $130. So that's a proven track record. I stand by that because I built that program myself. So I know that it works because I am one of the best contractors in the state of Connecticut. So I make sure that everybody when I sell you a piece of equipment, I stand by that equipment. So I want to make sure that you are aware of where this money is coming from and how you can utilize it.
Thank you. A response, Mr. Jackson.
In my lifetime here in Windsor, I've been a butcher, baker, candlestick maker, but lately I've been was a scrapper. And I want to point out that Energize Connecticut also takes out your old appliances and put in new ones, energy efficient ones, whether it's refrigerators or stoves. I see 3 people that have taken stuff out and 2 have put in. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Miriam?
I'm just going to add that, I think this past session, we did pass some bills that invested in clean energy, as I mentioned in my opening statement, but I think there's definitely more that we can do, and I think we need to act fast. This past year, we saw a lot of the detriments across the world that are occurring because of climate change, and it's very crucial that every state play, its role in doing what they can, but I think Connecticut needs to definitely try to be a leader in that. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to now go on to Mr. Jackson. Your second question is the following. What can the legislature do to increase access to technology that advances student and parent participation, knowledge, and education? I'll read it again for you. What can the legislature do to increase access to technology that advances student and parent participation, knowledge, and education?
You have to educate the parents to actually use the technology. I mean, parents get emails all the time. They get texts all the time. They ignore them. After a while, it gets to be annoying. But, COVID taught us this. We can do anything when we have to do it. We had to educate our kids. Luckily, Connecticut, or at least Windsor, had a online program already set up. It was amazing, almost as if they knew COVID was coming. But I know that's not true. In any case, I think that Windsor, in particular, I cannot speak to Hartford because I've not seen how Hartford has done things, and I have seen how South Windsor has done their things. We're on track. We just have to get parents used to using the system as is.
Thank you. Is there a response? Miriam?
Yeah, so I'm just going to add that, 2 things that stuck out to me, investing in programs for intervention. So when I was on the Windsor Board of Education, that's something that the Board of Ed has done continuously, investing in reading and math intervention programs that are evidence-based. And then increasing parent engagement. So one of the things that the pandemic taught us is people can be more available to especially teachers and staff if you meet them where they're at. So allowing people to participate in board meetings was one thing that we did virtually, but also now, when you're scheduling your parent-teacher conference, you have the option of saying, I can attend virtually. So if you're at work and you have a break, or you're at home with other kids, you can still attend. So increasing parent engagement and increasing our programs and investing in our programs.
Thank you very much. Okay. What we do is ask a question, and then there's the response from the other candidates. Okay, so we go on to our next question, and this is for candidate Khan. What is your position on the regionalization of cities and towns for economic reasons? Where do you think we can do this better? So what is your position on the regionalization of cities and towns for economic reasons? And where do you think we can do this better?
Okay, I think, people hear the term regionalization, and some people get very nervous or scared. I'm not nervous or scared of regionalization, but I think one thing that we want to make sure that we really look at, if we decide to ever go down that route, depending on which area we're looking at, is making sure there's oversight. So one of the things about Windsor is because we're a small town and we have, let's say, a local Board of Education that oversees our public schools, there's only about 6 schools that the Board of Ed oversees. And so each school is looked at very carefully. Each budget is thought out, very personalized for each school. When you are regionalizing, let's say, a school district, and you have now 20, 30, 40, 50 schools, obviously a Board of Ed or a governing body can't individualize that funding or a lot of what they're implementing to each school. And so I think if we look at regionalization in any area, I'm okay with it for economic purposes, but I think that the main thing is that there has to be oversight, and we need to be very picky-choosy on what we are saying that we want to regionalize.
Thank you very much. And so a response? Yes, Elijah?
I'm from the city of Hartford, Department of Public Works, and what we had formed, we started regional council of governments where everybody can purchase equipment at the same price. So we had expanded what we bought, like far as police vehicles, garbage trucks and everything, and that had expanded to states. Then it started expanding to other towns. So once you have a price, what they call a municipal price. So I want to make sure that that is expanded to contractors also in Connecticut.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Jackson?
Just to let you know that the town of Bloomfield and Windsor do share a transfer station. That would be considered regionalization in a way. Same thing with Enfield and Windsor Locks with their public health. They share. It works for them. It works for us. We could expand it, look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. So now we're going to go to the 7th senatorial. Mr. Kissel, question for you. Do you believe misinformation is a threat to our democracy? What do you do when constituents repeat misinformation? I'll read it again for you. Do you believe misinformation is a threat to our democracy? And what do you do when constituents repeat misinformation?
I'm humble enough to think that I don't know the right answer or the truth about everything. That's why public hearings are fabulous, because if you get 100 people in 2C in the legislative office building and I spend 8 hours in a public hearing, I learn a huge amount. For all of our candidates who aspire to be a legislator, it's like going to college or the best school in the world because you're constantly learning. If one of my constituents comes to me with something that I know that point blank is just not true, I will try to argue with them as best I can. But typically, it's going in the other direction. They want me to vote one way or another, and it's my job to gather up as much information as possible, use my best instincts, but also it's always a balance between, do I represent the interests of my constituents if I don't think it's the best policy? And, I think that I've been doing a good job of representing the interests of the district as a whole and balancing it competing needs. I don't think that disinformation or fake news is prevalent, but I think that with technology and the way you can superimpose pictures and something looks like the God's honest truth, because it's on the web, that you have to take it all with a grain of salt. And I think that, especially with my children, younger people are in tune to that. And so, yeah, you just have to be on your guard. But again, I think that you just use your common sense and you'll be okay.
Would we like to have a response, Ms. Mangini?
As far as misinformation, my position would be, and is, because I serve on the council in Enfield, to clarify with the individual, the resident, as to where the person picked up that piece of information, and then I would verify whether it's accurate, and then I would get back to the person with whether it's an accurate piece of information or if there's some area that needs to be clarified. That would be how I would approach it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Our next question, Ms. Mangini.
Yes.
What legislation would you support to reduce juvenile crime in our community? What legislation would you support to reduce juvenile crime in our community?
I believe, and statistics has shown also, much of our society suffers from juvenile crime because early on these children have experienced or continue to experience some sort of emotional or mental issues. My plan would be also as a legislator to work on legislation bills that would encompass mental health for children and our criminal justice system. We have to marry the two pieces because you can't fix or correct one without working on the other. And I believe that we need to address the root of the problem before we attempt to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kissel.
Briefly, I worked on proposed legislation called Safer Connecticut, and you can Google that and find it. Senate Republicans as well as House Republicans put it forward. We passed a lot of those reforms, but not all of them. For example, actually moms and dads were crying out for ankle bracelets while their children were waiting for court appearances. Some people looked down on that, but the parents were saying, hey, listen, I'm doing 2 jobs to make ends meet. I can't keep my eye on my 16-year-old at all times. This will help them. Also, gangs don't want anybody that's got an ankle bracelet. So there's a lot of more things that we can do, but again, if it's a serious crime, we have to treat juveniles like adults, and there has to be consequences for bad behavior that jeopardizes our health and safety.
Thank you. We're now going to go to the 60th District. Ms. Garibay. The pandemic has highlighted an already existing mental health crisis in our communities, especially among youth. What legislation would you propose to support to improve mental health care in Connecticut? Would you like me to read it again?
Nope.
Okay.
So I think first and foremost, we have to be able to find care for those suffering from mental health issues. Right now, if you're having a problem, you can't find a bed. There's no place for you to go. It takes weeks. The same thing with drug addiction, which sometimes goes with the mental health. I know of someone that went into the hospital for surgery and was dry for 10 days, right? They got out, they're looking for a service, they want to go into rehab, they want to continue what they've started. No beds. It's taken 6 weeks to find a bed. Unless that person were to drink again and go into crisis, then he would get an emergency bed. So I think we really have to look at the whole mental health and addiction issue, not that they go totally hand in hand, but how do we open up more services for more people? We did pass some legislation for children and mental health care, but we have to do more. We have to be able to service people, and we have to be able to do it in person. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, would you like to respond?
Yes, there are some things we can do at the local level first, and I'll also talk about the state level. At the local level, I'll use Windsor as an example. The town of Windsor had in place a contracted social worker, so to speak, and we just recently increased the funding for that position so that when the first responders, mostly police officers, get out to a site and determine that somebody's in need of mental services, that they can work with the state and other areas. However, the bigger issue is that the reimbursement rates to psychiatric institutions needs to be reviewed. And what has happened over time is that the number of bed spaces in places like the Institute have been reduced to the point where there are just not enough bed spaces to deal with mental health issues. We can do better as a state.
Thank you very much. And now, Mr. Walker, would you support aid in dying legislation? And if so, what would be the parameters? Would you support aid in dying, and what would you see as the parameters?
That is, that whole issue has a personal tinge to it. There have been hearings, not just in the state of Connecticut, but across the country. At what stage does a physician break his or her Hippocratic oath, which means to preserve life as best as we possibly can? What this issue is asking is for a physician that has taken an Hippocratic oath to move or do things to end life as we know it. Governments have to do it. On a religious level, personally, I'm not sure that I would support it or not support it. I don't know. It's just a broad, general question, and it is very involved and very emotional. And that's something that physicians themselves should get together and look at and take each case, maybe on a case-by-case basis. Cancer, for example. When families say they want their loved ones put out of misery, is it the right of government to intervene or to interject? Or should that be a decision between a physician and the patient? I'd say let that be a decision for the physician. Not my place, not government's place to determine who lives and who doesn't.
Would you like to respond, Ms.
Yes,
Kirby?
please. It's a very emotional issue. We did have a bill before that came to the House floor and passed bipartisan. It did not make it to the Senate floor. I believe, as Mr. Walker said, that it is a personal decision. It's a personal decision for each person to make, and I went to young people. I have a group that I go to of about 50. It came back unanimous in support of this. So, I was like, well, that's young people. They're just trying to knock us all off, right? So I went to our quilters group, to our walker talkers, and funny enough, it came back unanimous that they were in favor of aid to dying as a personal choice. We don't force it on anyone. We don't go out and say, you have to, leave this world. And I know personally, if I knew I had Alzheimer's and knew that at the time that I did not, thank you.
Thank you very much, candidates. That ends our question period. We're going to be now having 1.5 minutes each of you to wrap up your priorities to the voters. And so we're going to start with Mr. Jackson, and we're going to just go around in a circle like this. Mr. Charles Jackson, III.
How can I help you? That's my little slogan. Because I think that any politician that introduces themselves and starts rattling off priorities is not the way to go, but that's just me. The toughest part about running for office is sitting in this chair. I want you to know that. It's tough. I see people just not responding or some responding, and it throws you off. But what I will say is this, is that no matter what, whether I win this or not, which I'm pretty much sure I'm going to win it, I'm going to do my best to keep serving and keep helping people, okay? During the pandemic, I'm pretty sure no one called the previous incumbent. They called me. I helped a lot of people. Did fairly well. I think I can do well for the state. There's lots I'd like to tell you. The mayor, before he left, he would tell you, I can talk forever. I've got 30 seconds, so I'm going to wrap it up. You asked a question down to the 60th about dark money. How can a state curb in dark money? Well, it has to be done on a federal level. It's a 501c4 program that the IRS has. Until that's changed, there's nothing that can be done on a state level. You asked the question, I gave it to you. Ta-da. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Elijah El Hajbe?
I want to take responsibility of what is going on with the youth today. It's lack of leadership. We can't keep blaming this on the youth. We got to blame the leaders. The only time they want to do something is during election time. These youth are our youth. They're our children. We have to be examples for these children. We can't just pop around during election time. We have to make an example of ourselves to be an example for them. The Windsor have one of the best police departments in the state of Connecticut. Why? Because most of those people in the police force are our children. We watched them grow up through Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts to explorers to being the police. I want to make sure that we do the same thing with the fire department and the ambulance services. That is called being responsible. That is called leadership. We can't just keep worrying about what other towns is doing or not doing. We have to take responsibility. I'm going to be your person that you blame when nothing is happening. If nothing is done, keep all of these people up here accountable, not just during election time, but every time. I have given Miriam Khan a bunch of information. She have not gotten back into me. And that's just an ongoing process. Take responsibility for the positions you hold. That's my position. That's my mission. You can take down my signs all the time, but it won't change my mind. I stick by my truth. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cynthia Mangini for the 7th Senatorial.
Thank you. We are living in challenging times. Two top issues facing our state are women's reproductive rights and taxes. In order to provide our residents with quality of life that they deserve, we need to address these issues. I will take steps necessary to protect women's reproductive rights by supporting a woman's right to make her own decisions. It's not government's role to make these decisions for her. It is a decision to be made between the woman and her healthcare provider. Children's mental health also needs to be addressed. I will ensure that our state takes measures to work fiscally responsible. In order to accomplish these goals, it is important that government work in a bipartisan fashion. I have reached across the aisle numerous times on a local level to be successful in getting the work done. I will continue in this fashion to meet our goals on the state level, so I ask for your vote on November 8th, Cynthia Mangini, row A. Thank you.
Mr. John Kissel for the 7th Senatorial.
Sure, I'm State Senator John Kissel, serving the great people of Enfield, Somers, Suffield, Windsor, Windsor Locks, East Granby, and Granby, and the district now has parts of Ellington as well, and I'm asking for your vote. My number one concern is the cost of living. We talked about affordable housing, but I think the state of Connecticut's not affordable, and actually you can find housing wherever you want to go, but it's really hard because we are second probably only to Illinois as far as taxation. So we tax too much in Connecticut, and it's just too hard to make ends meet. So my commitment is to rein in government spending, work better, work harder, work more efficiently. Number two, I've been endorsed by the Police Officers Association of Connecticut as well as the Fraternal Order of Police. When it comes to crime, law enforcement's behind me, and I will fight tirelessly to make sure violent crime and juvenile crime comes down. And it's been out of control for 3 to 4 years for a variety of reasons. Uniformed firefighters support me. Realtors support me, as well as retired teachers have endorsed me. But the most important endorsement is your vote on November 8th. I'm cross-endorsed by the Independent Party of Connecticut as well as the Republican Party, of which I'm a member, and I'm asking for your support so that I can continue fighting for you in our state Senate here in the state of Connecticut. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kissel. Mr. Len Walker for the 60th.
You caught me off guard. I've lived in Windsor for over 20 years. Lived in Hartford, went in business in Hartford, bought property in Bloomfield, so I've been around. I'm also proud immigrant. I was born in Jamaica, attended private school in Jamaica at a young age, always supported education. I'm a Phi Theta Kappa member, so to speak. So I'm asking to get elected to the state legislature so I can go there and help do some of the things that Senator Kissel talked about, reducing taxes. That is important. When people go to buy gas, you go to the grocery store, some of us got grandkids, we gotta buy them stuff. I murmur and I mumble. The prices are just way out there. Even if people are making higher wages today, it comes out and it balances. So on November 8th, I'm asking you to vote for Len Walker to send me to the state. Out. Time's up. Good night, y'all.
Thank you. Ms. Jane Garabay for the 60th House District.
Thank you. One of the most important roles of a state representative is to provide constituent services. My office receives all kinds of inquiries looking for help from state agencies or in need of resources or direction. I am able to help my constituents with most issues related to the state and state agencies, including Department of Labor, unemployment, DMV, dilemmas, assessing food, accessing food, or heating assistance, or simply needing someone to share their thoughts with. I am able to do this, and we forget, but it's because of my team. I have a team at home that fully supports me, and I have a team at the Capitol. No legislator can promise to do anything on their own because we have to work together, we have to work across the aisle, and together we are stronger. And it's the only way to build, and the people, they help me achieve good laws. It is through collaboration that we get there, and it allows a legislature later to be truly successful, similarly to how I operated as House Chair of the Aging Committee. Because of my skills, I was named Chair of Aging and won the Leading Age Legislator of the Year award with my fellow co-chair, Senator Pat Billy Miller. I am engaged in the community, I listen, I learn, and I act on behalf of my constituents. Please vote for me on November 8th.
Thank you. And for the 5th House District, Miriam Khan.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody that came out today for being engaged and informed citizens and those that are able to join us virtually. One thing that I'm really proud that I was able to do in my short time in the session since March is that I was able to connect with people in the community, respond to emails and phone calls that I got from people in the community. A lot of people reached out and to advocate on behalf of legislation. Those are all very important to me because I can't represent you accurately if I don't know how you feel. So I'm really proud that I was able to do so. If you're signed up for my newsletter, you'll know how often I send out information that's helpful to people in the district. We send out information about some great programs that the state has, a lot of grants people can apply to in terms of rent assistance, mortgage assistance, first-time homebuyer loans, and grants. And so if I have not spoken to you yet, I encourage you to reach out to me if I don't get to you first. And November 8th, I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Khan. I have a message here from the Registrar of Voters. The last day to register to vote is Tuesday, November 1st. The registrar will be open from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. For someone who turns 18, becomes a citizen, or moved into town after November 1st, the last day to register for those people is November 7th. So to remind everybody, the last day to register to vote is actually November 1st. If you want to see a sample ballot, all you need to do is go to townofwindsorct.com to the town clerk's office. They have all the sample ballots there. If you go to the registrar's office on townofwindsorct.com, you can find your district by just putting in your address. And on our wall to my right is the new districts that you can look at. I'm going to thank each of you individually. And then after that, we're going to take a 5-minute break so that we can pass over to our probate candidates. So I want to thank Senator John Kissel, candidate John Kissel, for the 7th senatorial. Thank you very much, Ms. Cynthia Mangini, for the 7th senatorial candidate. For the 5th House District candidate, Elijah L. Hajbay, thank you very much for participating. For the 5th House District candidate, Charles W. Jackson III, thank you very much. For the 5th House District candidate, Miriam Khan, thank you very much. For the 60th House District, Jane Garibay, thank you very much for participating. For the 60th House District candidate, Len Walker, thank you all very much. We are going to take a 5-minute break now so that we can then prepare for our probate. Please take advantage of our refreshments. Thank you all. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you again. We are bringing everybody together after a very short break. This is the second part of our candidates' night. This part of our candidates' night will focus on our probate judges. For our probate judges, I will just briefly go over some of the ground rules. Each of you will have 2 minutes for opening remarks. And the moderator will, well, actually, I probably will point to just the two of you. The length of the remarks will be timed. A candidate will be asked a question. Then the candidates will have 2 minutes to respond. Then the other candidate will be able to have 1 minute to respond to that question. And then at the end, you will have 1.5 minutes for closing statements. All right. So if we're ready to begin, because it's just the two of you, and this is for probate judge, which is basically a very kind of new thing for us. We haven't had a probate judge, so it's very nice that we have two candidates. We will be able to have 3 rounds of questions for each of you. And so we're going to begin with opening remarks. And our first one is candidate Ted Bister. Tad Bister, candidate for probate judge.
Thank you. Good evening. Before getting started, I would like to thank the Windsor-North Central League of Women Voters, the Windsor Chamber of Commerce, and CT Votes for sponsoring this event and giving me the opportunity to discuss my qualifications and experience. And thank you to the ladies and gentlemen here this evening. My name is Tad Bistor, and I am running for the position of Greater Windsor Probate Judge. The Greater Windsor Probate District covers the towns of Windsor, South Windsor, and East Windsor. Most people are aware of a probate judge's job to preside over the administration of wills and estates, but probate judges also handle a wide variety of sensitive matters involving children, the elderly, and persons with intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. They are also responsible for running their respective courts. This year's election for Greater Windsor Probate Judge should be about experience. I have been practicing law for over 28 years, almost as long as my opponent has been alive. I have represented parties in over 2,000 court hearings and trials. I have represented children in family court as guardian ad litem and attorney for the minor child for over 20 years. I have administrative and managerial experience from running my law practice, as well as having run and held top leadership roles in several organizations. Being almost twice her age, I have more life experience than my opponent. I have buried both of my parents, I have lost close friends, I have helped raise children, and I have lived with and assisted family members who have suffered from mental and physical disabilities. As for the position of probate judge, I intend to commit the vast majority of my work week to presiding over the court. Canon 2 of the Code of Probate Judicial Conduct specifically requires that the duties of a probate judge shall take precedence over the judge's personal and extrajudicial activities, and the citizens of this probate district deserve a judge who will commit to dealing with their matters expeditiously. While the code allows probate judges to continue to engage in the private practice of law, it is my intention to severely curtail taking on new matters in my law practice so that I can dedicate at least 30 to 40 hours per week to my judicial duties and responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Mary Deneen for probate judge.
Thank you. My name is Mary Deneen, and I'm running for Greater Windsor Probate Judge. I've spent most of my life here in Windsor, and I'm currently an attorney with a general practice law firm here in town. Throughout my campaign, many people have asked me why I'm running for probate judge and why now. When I was first admitted to the Connecticut bar, I wrote to many different probate courts in the area, letting them know I was available for appointments as an attorney for those who weren't able to hire their own private attorney. Since then, I've represented many, many individuals in a variety of probate matters, and I've truly found my passion in this work. I've been involved in both voluntary and involuntary conservatorships, terminations of parental rights, temporary custody matters, guardianship cases, trusts, estates, and more. I've found the work extremely rewarding and fulfilling, and I've met some of the best people in the process. Many of the individuals I've represented are in very vulnerable positions, and they need someone to advocate on their behalf. whether they're an elderly person struggling with dementia, a young child who is unable to express their wishes, or an individual with special needs. I've had the privilege of working closely with these individuals and zealously advocating on their behalf. That's why I'm running for probate judge. Probate judges have the immense responsibility of protecting society's most vulnerable individuals, and I know that I'm the best candidate to serve our community in this capacity. Not only do I have invaluable probate experience, but I'm also a caring and compassionate person. I'm extremely hardworking, and I truly understand the importance of this role. I don't take this position lightly, and I would be honored if I was given the opportunity to serve the greater Windsor area in this capacity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are now going to go on to our question part. There will be 3 rounds of questions. I will begin with one of the candidates, and we'll go back and forth. Each candidate can respond to the question, and then the other candidate, each can make a response to the question, and then we will have a response from the other candidate. All right, so we're going to begin with Mary Deneen, and with the first question. The Greater Windsor Probate Court has experienced significant case backlogs. What methods would you propose to improve procedures and efficiency?
Thank you. So I know one of the issues the clerks have discussed is that there are 4 positions for clerks in the court, and right now they've steadily had 3 clerks in those positions. So I know they've had trouble having that 4th person stay on. So I think it would be important to hire a qualified and dedicated person to fill that 4th role and hopefully speed up the backlog. Another thing that I know we could improve is the estates. Estates generally in Greater Windsor take up to a year to settle, which is much longer than sometimes they need to take. In a lot of cases, there are petitions sent to the court with the waivers of the beneficiaries already signed. I think a big improvement would be if the new probate judge could take those petitions, if they already have the waivers, issue the decree right then and move those cases along in the pipeline. I don't know, the back end of things. I just see it from the other side. So if I was elected and in the court, I'm sure there are a number of ways we could increase productivity. And I think having a probate judge in the court a significant amount of time each week could improve procedures. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bester, would you like to respond?
Yes. First of all, it's my intention to spend as many hours as needed in the probate court to handle the matters. As Mary's mentioned, obviously we need to have another clerk. We also have learned some lessons from COVID, and we're able to make use of technology. So I think we need to make better use of that to be able to have remote hearings that can be done quickly, where we don't have to be jamming up the court with having people come to the court for the hearings. I think that would move matters along. And we need to prioritize the matters that are currently backlogged in the court to handle the things that can be done quickly, get those done and out of the way, and then move on to the more lengthy matters.
Thank you. Our second question, Mr. Bester. Do you believe that all citizens have adequate access to legal help in the legal system, regardless of race, gender, or economic status? If not, what do you feel can be done to provide wider and better access?
I don't believe that everybody has equal access to the courts and equal representation. Certainly, money plays a factor in that. People that have the money can afford to hire attorneys to move their matters along. I think that we need to better fund the programs that allow for lower cost attorneys, legal aid. We need to encourage more attorneys to do pro bono work I do a substantial amount of that as part of my practice, or I do matters on a sliding scale. I have a lot of clients that come in to my office and, need to have legal work done. And, for them, maybe it's $50 an hour instead of my normal hourly rate, because that's all that they can afford to do. And we need to encourage attorneys to do more of that.
Thank you. Ms. Deneen, would you like to respond to that?
I would, thank you. I agree that there can be improvements to the access to the courts. Similar to what Tad has said, I think we should encourage attorneys to take on the appointments similar that I have done since being admitted to the bar. These attorneys are paid by the state and are completely free to the client. So usually the court automatically appoints these attorneys, but there is not a long list of us. So I think encouraging attorneys to get on these lists would improve access. I also have had a number of clients who do not speak fluent English, and better access to translators in the probate court could improve their access and understanding of the courts. Thank you.
Thank you. So for our second round of questions, Mr. Bester, the question is, please describe one instance in which you faced an ethical dilemma and how you resolved it.
That's a tough one. Well, certainly, I've represented a lot of individuals in family court as a court-appointed attorney for contempt matters. And, oftentimes in that situation, some attorneys take the easy road out, and they'll provide some representation for the client, but they don't do their best to represent that client. I never took that road, and I had a reputation of that in family court. No matter who my client was, whether they were right or wrong in not paying their child support or not following the court orders, it was my job as their attorney to represent them to the best of my ability. That's what I'm sworn to do, and that's what I do day in, day out. And I'm always there to support my clients and to do the best for my clients, no matter what the position is. That's my job, and I take it seriously.
Thank you. Ms. Deneen, would you like to respond?
Yes. I have one case that comes to mind. There was a termination of parental rights where I represented the birth mother, and the child was living with other relatives that were in a better situation than the birth parents. And I'm not sure if it was an ethical dilemma, but it seemed that the child was best placed where he was. But it was my job to zealously advocate for my client, who was the mother, and we were successful in preventing her parental rights from being terminated, which is a big deal to have them terminated. So we protected her rights, even though, she couldn't care for her kid in that way. She was able to still have some legal right for her child.
Thank you. Ms. Deneen, the next question. How do you deal with difficult people, including peers, lawyers, clients, or litigants? How do you deal with difficult people, including peers, lawyers, clients, or litigants?
That's something I've learned how to do much better since becoming an attorney. You definitely have to have a backbone. You have to learn how to say no, and you have to learn how to put your foot down. I'm definitely more of I like to see both sides and get people into the middle. But when you're on the other side as the attorney, you definitely have to learn how to deal with difficult people. I have one case now that I'm dealing with very adversarial family members, and, you know, people aren't going to agree. They're going to fight you on your decisions, but you just have to know what's best for the situation, know the law, and learn when to say no and stick up for the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bester, would you like to respond?
Yes. Certainly as attorneys, we deal with difficult people every day. Sometimes it's our clients, oftentimes it's opposing counsel. But that's the life of an attorney. And, you know, 90%, I think, is the normal statistics that are used. 90% of cases settle. And you need to be able to negotiate with these difficult people. Do it with a smile on your face. Be polite. Treat them with respect. Even if they're being difficult, they're still people, and you owe that to them.
Thank you. We're now on to our third round of questions. Ms. Deneen, if you observed a party in your courtroom being poorly represented by an unprepared or ineffective lawyer, how would you handle the situation?
In that situation, I would probably address the attorney directly and ask them why they weren't prepared for their client, what they had done prior to the hearing that made them seem insufficiently prepared for the hearing. Unfortunately, if they're not prepared, it only hurts their client. If it was so severe that we needed to continue the hearing and appoint new counsel, that could be something to be looked into. But unfortunately, it is the lawyer's responsibility to put in the work for their client, fight for their client, and always be prepared for every hearing. Thank you.
Mr. Bester, would you like to respond?
Yes. So I agree with Mary in some respects. I think having a conversation with the attorney is appropriate, but that should be done off to the side. That shouldn't be done in front of the client. The judge's job is to get the facts that they need to be able to make their decision. And if you have to ask the questions yourself to get the answers that you need, then that's what you do as a judge. And so I'm not going to let ineffective counsel prevent me from getting the facts that I need to make a decision in a particular case. I'll ask the questions myself.
Thank you. Mr. Bester, what types of cases have you represented that have prepared you for the position of probate judge?
I've handled a wide variety of cases. Most of my practice is in family court. I'm dealing with people that are there in some of the worst cases of their lives because they're seeing their families being broken apart. I represent children. I've been on the court-appointed list for attorneys to represent children as guardian ad litem or attorney for the minor child since that list has been in existence. I've been representing children for over 20 years. And it's a very rewarding job. But you also see the impact that their parents' actions have on their lives. And I think that's probably the one thing that gave me the experience that I need to deal with the children's matters that a probate judge needs to deal with. Those are the most difficult cases that a probate judge needs to deal with, are the ones that involve children. And I think my experience in family court and representing children have put me in a very good position to deal with those types of matters. With regard to the other matters, as I indicated, I've had family members who have suffered from physical and mental disabilities. That has prepared me to deal with the conservatorship cases that come before a probate judge. And certainly, my representation of clients with regard to wills and their probate matters has put me in a position to deal with those cases.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Deneen, would you like to respond?
Yes. I've committed probably 85% of my practice to probate matters. As I stated earlier, I've been involved in conservatorships, custody matters, guardianship matters, represented a lot of private clients in their estate work and estate planning. I've been a conservator for multiple clients, and I'm currently conservator for a few clients. And I think more than just experience makes a good probate judge. I think you need someone who's diplomatic, hardworking, smart, level-headed, and I believe I possess those qualities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That concludes our question and answer section. I will now go on to the closing statements. You will each have 1.5 minutes to make a closing statement. We'll begin with Ms. Deneen.
When people come before the probate court, they're often in emotional and heavy situations. There are happy occasions, such as adoptions and name changes, but more often than not, people are dealing with the death of a loved one, a family member suffering from dementia, a child in a bad family situation and in need of a guardian. When confronting these stressful situations, you want a probate judge who is not only knowledgeable of the law, but who is also willing to listen to all sides, someone who is compassionate, diplomatic, and dedicated to their role. I am that candidate. If elected, I will work tirelessly for this community. I will listen, learn, and dedicate my time and energy to being the best probate judge possible. I know that there will be a lot of learning to be done and time spent in order to fill Judge Lassman Fisher's shoes, but I am up for the task and ready to give it my all. I truly am passionate about this work, and I feel that it is my purpose in life to support and protect those who are most vulnerable in our society. I would be extremely humbled and grateful if I was elected to serve the Greater Windsor Probate Court as your probate judge, and I thank you for your consideration on Election Day. Thank you.
Mr. Bester.
Thank you again to the Windsor-North Central League of Women Voters, the Windsor Chamber of Commerce, and CT Votes for sponsoring this event, and to all of you that are here in attendance this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, if elected as probate judge, I promise to treat the parties coming before me with the respect, compassion, and empathy they deserve, and will give them a full and fair opportunity to present their respective positions. I recognize that my opponent's family is well known and well respected here in Windsor. They have lived here and practiced law here for many years. But my opponent's family is not running for probate judge. Ms. Deneen herself has been practicing law for less than 2 years. I've been practicing law for more than 28. When voting for a probate judge, experience matters. If you or a loved one were to have a matter to be heard in probate court, which of these two attorneys sitting here, would you rather have deciding those important matters for your family? Thank you, everyone, and good evening.
Thank you. I'm going to just do a couple of reminders before I thank each of the candidates. We have some important dates for you to remember. November 1st is the last day you can register to vote. November 7th is the last day you can get an absentee ballot from the town clerk's office. November 7th is also the last time you can register to vote if you turn 18 or become a citizen or you move into town. November 8th is Election Day. We ask you to please vote. There will be a question on the ballot. The question is, shall the Constitution of the state be amended to permit the General Assembly to provide for early voting? If you would like to know more information about this question, you can go to the town clerk's website under elections. The sample ballots are there, and also the large PDF concerning this particular question. We thank everybody for your attention. We thank you very much, candidate Mary Deneen for probate judge and candidate Tad Bester
Vistor.
for probate judge. Thanks, everybody, for your time. We appreciate it.